welcome to the next lesson in our complete Intro to Rendering in Blender course. Quick reminder, we're offering the entire first unit of our course for free for a limited time here on YouTube. If you're new here, I'd recommend starting at the beginning of the course. I've added a link in the description. All right, go ahead and open up Blender and let's jump right in. In this lesson, we'll continue with the file we've been working on. So go ahead and make sure that file is open. And then if you're like me, you're looking at the viewport and you see something other than the rendered view, and that happens sometimes when you reopen up a file, go on up to the top right of your viewport and find that far right icon for viewport shading rendered. Go ahead and click on that. Now, we've been working through the steps of the photographer method, and in the previous lesson, we covered step 3, which was all about the lighting. So now that we have a render ready model, that was step 1, we set up our camera in step 2, and we've lit that model there in step 3, we're now ready for the 4th step, and that's to add colors and materials. So again, thinking like a photographer, if you were in the real world and you were gonna photograph a project, you might not get to pick the colors and materials from scratch. The environment or the object that you're gonna take a photo of may already have all the colors and materials decided, but you still get to style your shot. So you may be able to swap items in and out that have different textures and colors. And so you can think about this like a professional photographer and say, what would be the best colors for the different objects in the scene? Okay, now when it comes to adding colors and materials in Blender, there are a few different ways to go about it. First, you can add a material to an entire object. So let's figure out how that works. So with your select tool, go ahead and click once and select the monkey object. Then over on the right-hand side, down near the bottom of this right-hand side, you'll see this little sphere icon. This is for the Material Properties tab. Go ahead and click on it. And you'll see over here, Suzanne, remember that's the name of the monkey object. So this says Suzanne here. And there are no materials here in this area. So Suzanne currently doesn't have a material applied to her. Come over to the right-hand side and click on the New button. And you've now added a material named Material to Suzanne. And you can see here in the hierarchy, it says Suzanne, and then it says Material. Now, let's take a quick tour through what a material is and how it works. The first thing is you can rename the material here where it says Material. So click and highlight the name Material, and let's type Monkey and press Enter or Return. You'll notice that that name changes here, here, and here. So this is all just displaying the name of the material that we've named Monkey. Just beneath where you named it, click on the preview to open it up. This shows you what this material would look like if it were on a sphere. And notice to the right, these icons here. For example, you could click on the plane and that would show you what it looks like on a flat plane, or a cube, and that will show you what it would look like rendered on a cube. Let's go ahead and keep it on the sphere for now. As we'll see later, this preview can be helpful when we're trying to set up materials, and we may not necessarily see what we want over here in the viewport, but this gives us a quick way to see if our changes are working the way we want them to here in the preview window. Okay, now down here where it says surface, you'll notice that it says surface again here, and there's something that says principled BSDF. Go ahead and click on that name, and you'll notice there's all sorts of different types of materials that could be added to this surface. I'll click on that again as it went away. Now, for the most part, the principled BSDF, that's the default, and that's gonna be the one that's the most flexible that we'll use a majority of the time. So right now, we're just gonna focus on principled BSDF. There will be times in future lessons where we'll cover a little bit more about what some of these other things are. So let's go ahead and just click out of that so we let go of that menu. Just pointing out that that's what that is. That's the type of material that is being applied to the surface. Okay, with all of that out of the way, there are really just a few key things that you need to know right now about how to change this material or color to what you need it to be. And it's important for me to point out, I've been saying the word material, and a material is either a color, so right now it's white, or a texture, we'll talk more about that in a moment, that's applied to a surface. So a material combines all of those things underneath the hood. Now, if this is just gonna be a flat color, then here where it says base color, on the swatch itself where it's white, go ahead and click on it, and you can change the color of this material here. So go ahead and click and hold down and drag into the pinks and let go. And you'll see that immediately you've changed this to a base color of pink. Now it's worth pointing out that if you didn't change your viewport shading mode early on, or you open this file later and you're back in this second one over, which is the solid mode, This solid mode does not show you the colors that you're adding. So often I'll find that students are trying desperately to change the colors, but it's not showing up. And that's just that they don't have the viewport rendering set up so that it's going to show them the rendered view. So come back over to that far right one and click on it, and you'll notice now that that pink material shows up. So the main things to consider are the base color. That's going to set up what the color is being applied. The second thing is the roughness. And you can think of the roughness as how rough or not rough the material is, or the opposite of that would be how shiny or dull it is. So if you slide the roughness lower, it will be less rough. And what I mean by slide is go ahead and actually click and hold down and drag this slider to the left. You'll notice that over here, it gets shinier because it is less rough. And then if you click and hold down and drag to the right, you'll notice it gets more dull because it is more rough. So the roughness slider, if you slide it to the left and the right, controls the amount of shine that this has. Let's go ahead and slide it more to the left, not all the way, but more to the left for just right now, so it's a bit shinier. So the base color is the first primary thing you're worried about. The roughness is the second. And the metallic property, well, there is a slider here that would allow you to slide it between 0 to 1. In the real world, something either is metallic or is not. So this value should either be set to 0 when it's a non-metallic material, or all the way to 1 when it is metallic. So in this case, you could go ahead and just click on this number, type 1, and press enter or return, and it immediately switches to a metallic surface. And you see how that changes not only what you see here in your rendering, but notice on the sphere, it's really clear that that looks like a purplish metal ball. Notice that with this at 1, it will still respect the roughness, so it's a bit shinier. Notice that if you slide the roughness a bit to the right, it gets to be a more matte looking metal.
Hey everyone, we're doing something a little unconventional here, and for a limited time, we're giving you access to the entire first unit of one of our paid courses for free right here on YouTube, and this lesson is a part of it. Blender is a beast of a program to learn, but with the right approach, it doesn't have to be. That's why we created Blender Academy, to help people build the Blender skills they need and then go out and get the jobs they want. We hope you find these lessons to be a good investment of your time. If you do, and you're serious about learning Blender, head over to our website and continue learning with us. Thanks for watching, make sure to like and subscribe, and now, back to the lesson.
Okay, so when you're new to Blender, those 3 properties are really all you need to know when it comes to creating a flat color. There are some other interesting things that we'll be able to set up, and there are some materials where we'll need to know a little bit more. But for right now, those are the 3 ones to focus on. And let's go ahead and focus on, for the part of the monkey that would be its fur or skin, let's think about a monkey brown or tan that we could set that to. So come up to your base color, click on it, and maybe slide it towards the white, but kind of the top of the reddish oranges white area. And then if you slide this slider here to the right down into the darks or the blacks, you're darkening that down. And you see over there on the monkey, you're having an effect on it coming down to some sort of tan brown-like color. Now this would not be metallic, so let's go ahead and click on metallic and type 0 and press enter or return. And then when it comes to the roughness, of course, this wouldn't be shiny skin, but since we're doing something that looks a little bit cartoony, I'll go ahead and slide the roughness to the left a bit, taking it down to, I don't know, in the 0.3 category, just so I have a little bit of reflection that makes it look interesting. There's really no right or wrong to what we're doing here, just wanting to change this color and see how we can adjust those 3 dials relative to one another. Okay, so that's how we select an object, create a material, and make adjustments to it so that it applies to that entire object. Now, we've been doing this to the monkey head. What about the plane? Go ahead and click on the plane to select it. And notice that over on the right-hand side, all that information goes away because currently there is no material being applied to the plane. Now, just to the left of the new button, notice this material list here. If you click on it, it will drop down the list of materials that you have. And we had created this monkey material, so we do have that in our list. Go ahead and click on it, and it will apply the exact same material to the plane in the background. You notice that it's still titled monkey, so even though we applied this to the plane, there's only one monkey material being applied to each of these objects. So it should probably make sense that if you come down and click on the base color, for example, to change it, And let's say that you want the base color for the plane to be something in the blue category. I'll click on it to get that menu up, and then click and drag this up. You'll notice that not only does the plane change, but the monkey does as well. So let's go ahead and switch that back. Click on that swatch and slide that slider back over to the more tan-like area that we wanted. Then click once outside. And with that plane still selected, if we want to add a different material to the plane, then over here, you'll notice that next to where it says monkey, you'll see these little 2 page icons here. If you hover over it, it says new material, add a new material. Go ahead and click on that. And that added a new material to the plane. Now the material inherited what we already had on the plane, meaning that it's called monkey. It added a number to make it unique from the other monkey material, and it has all the same colors and other material properties applied to it. But now you can totally change it without messing with the original monkey head. So first, let's go ahead and name this. Highlight where it says monkey 001 and type plane and press enter or return. Then come down to the base color, click on it, and let's slide this up to the blues. Maybe we lighten it up a bit too, so I'll slide this slider up a bit. Something that looks kind of like a nice blue in the background. Then click off of that. And you could play around with the roughness or the metallic sliders, although I like it to be roughly like this. I don't want it to be too shiny or too dull. This feels right. It's got a little bit of highlights from the lights and some other dark areas where there's shadow. It looks interesting to me, so I'll leave all of that alone. Notice too that as you're adding color, you might decide that your lighting quality has changed. Maybe your light feels too bright if you picked lighter colors, or it feels too dark if you picked darker colors. So as you're adding materials, just important to note that you may need to go back to adjust some of the lighting after the fact. For now, we're gonna leave ours alone, but if yours is looking a little dull or a little too bright, that's totally normal as you're adding materials, and it's something that you could adjust later. Okay, so far we've been looking at adding materials to entire objects, and we've done that with both the monkey and the plane, and we've seen how we can either apply the same material to both, or we can create a new material so that each has their own. But what about if we want to paint materials on just parts of an object? For example, on the monkey, maybe we want to be able to paint black on the pupils. Well, in order to do that, we need to get into edit mode. So far, we've been in object mode, but go ahead and click once to select the monkey head. Notice in the upper left-hand corner, we're in object mode. Press the tab key on your keyboard, and notice that switches us into edit mode. So we're gonna need to get inside edit mode and then select the faces that we want to paint with a different material. So go ahead and scroll in to zoom in a little closer to the eye area, then press 3 for the face select tool. Then click once on one of the faces here of the pupil. Hold down the Shift key and click on each new face here around this radial area here, and you'll pick all of the faces that represent what I'm going to call the pupil. Keep Shift held down, and let's do it for the other eye as well. And while there are other selection strategies that could possibly select these just a little bit quicker, I'm going to worry about the manual selection process we're showing here for right now. But do note that an ability to select well is going to be really helpful when you're applying materials, especially when you're in edit mode and you're applying different materials to different spots. Also notice that we didn't create this monkey head, but had we done so, we'd want to make sure we modeled with materials in mind, meaning that we would want to create the mesh such that we were able to select the parts and pieces that we wanted to paint separately. Okay, with those faces selected, come over to the right-hand side. We're still in the Materials tab. And over to the right of where it says monkey, there's a plus and a minus here. Click on the plus. That will add a new material slot. A material slot is just saying that an object can have more than one material slot or more than one material applied to it. So with that second slot, we need to create a new material. So where it says new, go ahead and click on it. So we've created a new material in that second slot. Let's name this. So highlight the name where it says material, and let's call it pupil, and press enter or return. Then below, we see what material we have here. Let's go down to where it says base color, click on that swatch, and let's slide the right-hand slider all the way down to black, and then hover off of it. And we can see here there's a little bit of reflectivity. Let's make it even slightly more reflective by sliding the roughness slider to the left a bit. Somewhere up near about 0.3 might be nice, we'll see. Now we notice that material is not being applied over here, and that's because we haven't assigned it yet. So just beneath where we have the materials list, the pupil material is selected, the faces are selected, so you can go ahead and click on the Assign button. Go ahead and do that. And you've assigned that material to those faces. Go ahead and click once outside of that mesh and you'll deselect all of those faces so you can get a better look at that material being applied there. Now you'll notice that those faces were these bigger triangles, yet the actual material seemed to be applied in a rounded way here. Remember that we've applied the subdivision surface modifier, and so it is having us paint the faces as they are wrapping in that subdivided way, not the real underlying triangular faces that we had before we applied that modifier. Okay, so of course we could continue to use this strategy, selecting maybe the whites of the eyes, creating a new material and assigning it to it, and so on. But for right now, you get the idea. If you're in edit mode, you can add more material slots, select the faces that you want to paint, and then assign that new material to those faces. Note too that it is possible to free paint. And what I mean by that is if you wanted to say add some sort of blemish that kind of came across this edge here, but didn't cover both of these faces entirely, it is possible to paint, kind of free paint on this surface. But that's a somewhat more advanced topic that we'll cover in a future lesson. I just want to point out that that is possible, but for right now, we're just talking about painting full polygons or full faces. Okay, go ahead and press the Tab key to get out of edit mode, and now you're back in object mode. And now if you zoom back out a bit, you see that you've added that extra material, and you see how that makes the rendering look a little bit nicer. Okay, so far everything we've covered has been about flat colors. But what about surfaces that can't be represented with just a single color? Like for example, wood or brick and other patterns and textures. To add materials that represent those types of surfaces, you can import image textures. So let's talk about how that works. First, in order to follow along, you're going to need to go to your web browser. I'm going to flip over to mine, and I'd like for you to go to a website called ambientcg.com. That's AMBIENTCG.com. In ambientcg.com, you can type in a search for metal 041B to get to this exact material that you see here that I found. I'm just going to go back to the materials page. If you were just browsing around, you'll notice that there are many materials here, and you could click on any one of them. It doesn't have to be the one that I'm showing you here, but I'm going to go back to the one that I found called metal 041B. And you'll notice that this is metal, but there are also some gouge scratch marks. There's some rust, and you can see that it's shiny where there's no rust, and then it's dull where the rust is. So there's a lot of complexity to this. But the first idea is that the only way to represent a surface like this is not with a flat color. In fact, you need something called a texture, which is really just an image or a photograph that was taken of the rust on the metal, and then it was prepared in a way that it will seamlessly tile or repeat across your 3D model. So this particular rust pattern, if stretched out across a large wall, would repeat again and again and again, but hopefully in a way that wasn't that detectable to the eye. Now, I happen to know that this particular rust pattern is not a true photograph of something in the real world. It's something known as a procedural texture that is controlled more by math under the hood, but that's not something you need to worry about because we are going to bring in an image or a photo of this and apply it to our plane in Blender. So what you do when you find a particular material that you like is you come over where it says 1K, 2K, 4K, and so on. And I generally go for the JPEGs. As you get more advanced, you'll see when and why you would want a JPEG versus a PNG. And the K has to do with the resolution. So 1K will be lower resolution, meaning if you're zoomed in a bit, it will be more blurry, but the file size is much smaller, whereas 8K is the opposite. Now, you wouldn't need 8K here. To bring in all that information would slow down your render times in Blender, but you wouldn't want 1K either because even though it would be faster, it's likely to be a little bit lower quality. So either 2K to 4K is generally going to be your best bet. For this example, we're doing something simple, so you could go ahead and download the 4K version. So just click on it to download it. And then wherever it downloads, come back over to Blender. And you're going to import an image that came in from that zip file. But first, you'll need to go to the zip file and unpack it. So you'll need to unzip it, however you unzip your zip files, so that you have the underlying folder that you can look inside. And then once you're ready, you can follow along with what we're going to do next here. So first you want to select the plane. So click once on the back there and you'll select the plane. Then over on the right hand side where it says Surface Principled BSDF, just beneath that you see base color. And when something should be represented by an image texture instead of a color, then you just click on that yellow dot next to it. And you'll see that you have many different things that you could bring in instead of a flat color. So I'll click on that again. And you'll see there's a category for texture, and there's a whole bunch of different types of textures. Now, most of these textures come pre-bundled with Blender, but the one we're interested in right now, we'll cover what these other ones mean in future lessons, but the one we want right now is image texture. So go ahead and click on that. Now, when you first pick it, it turns pink. And pink might look like a cool color to put back there, but really it's just Blender's way of saying, hey, I don't know which file you want me to use yet. So I'm just using pink as a placeholder for now to catch your attention. So then just beneath where it says base color here, click on the open button and then navigate to wherever that file downloaded for you and wherever you unzipped that zip file. Then find that folder and double click on it. And you'll notice that it came with many files. So what are all these files? We'll talk about that in just a moment. But what you're always looking for when you download these types of materials from other websites is the file that's named either color, as we see here, it says color. Sometimes it'll be named base or base color. It may also be named diffuse or DIFF. Those are all different naming conventions to let you know that that's the actual one you want when it comes to the base color. So let's go ahead and click on the one that says color. That selects it, and then click open image. And immediately the background plane is replaced with that image and it's painted onto that plane. Now, it's not entirely realistic yet. That's because we should have some metal happening where there's metal, but then the rust should be dull where it's rusty. We should have that metal be a little scratchy in places, a little shiny in places. And right now this generally looks dull and flat. And we're going to get into all of that in our next lesson, where we'll talk about how to make imported materials look more realistic using something known as the shader editor. But first, before we do that, we've now covered how to add materials to entire objects, how to adjust those materials in the key settings. We've seen that those materials can be flat colors, or they can also be imported images. So we actually know quite a bit. And we could experiment now with many different rendering opportunities inside of Blender without even going any further. So I highly recommend you take what you've learned so far, experiment, play around with your own models, or maybe just bring in other meshes and try using different strategies to add the materials to them and see how that all plays out. And then in the next lesson, we're going to continue where we're leaving off here and make this background rust metal material look more realistic using those other files that we imported in from Ambient CG. So once you feel comfortable with what you've learned here, you're ready to move on to that next lesson.
Congratulations, you made it through the lesson. Did you find this video to be helpful? Let us know by giving it a like. If you're ready for the next lesson, you can find it in this playlist. And if you're interested in learning more about how we can help you build the skills you need, head over to BlenderAcademy.com. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and until next time, happy blending!